the soul of the server, forging community in Riot MMOs. At the end of the day, like the community, sure, it's on like the player base to make it, but at the same time, it's on the Riot Games team to facilitate the environment that allows it to happen. So the billion-dollar architecture question. The ultimate success of the Riot Games' highly anticipated MMO won't just hinge on its combat, graphics, or the rich lore of Runeterra. Its long-term fate will be forged in a realm largely invisible to the player, its server architecture, which is more than a technical detail. It's a philosophical choice that will shape the game's social fabric, community health, and its stability to survive in a cutthroat market. And it's just the world of Runeterra. The MMO genre is defined by a deep tension between two design philosophies. That's what I've noticed. On one side, we have the legacy of classic, isolated servers. Digital worlds that fostered powerful bonds, lasting reputations, and unique server identities. On the other are modern mega servers, a dynamic sharding which prioritize seamless access and performance, often at the cost of social cohesion. So I searched around Reddit, I looked at like what the community sentiment is, and that's where it seemed like the divide is. Some people were like, we want classic, where it's an isolated server, which is how classic would be, right? You join Whitemane, or Bigglesworth, or Bloodsail Buccaneers, whatever. And that server is completely isolated from the rest of these servers. If you go into the forest and you're farming boars, then you will only see people from your server and doing that thing. And if there's no one on your server in that area, well, then you'll never see anyone. The good thing about something like this is that, yeah, it does form, like connections and bonds with other players, and you form a reputation. Like, let's say you're a guy who's known on the server for ganking. You go out, you gank a bunch of players on the other side. You develop a reputation with them. Like I know there was a guy on the Horde who was a rogue, and he was just pushing people off of bridges. The Alliance players definitely knew who this guy was. They were like, watch out for this guy, bridge pusher 123, because he's pushing people off the bridge. Like there's like a smoke bomb or whatever attracts someone, they fall off the bridge. So your reputation means a lot here. And the same thing goes the other way. Like if you ninja loot one time, which is, the raid drops a guild set, an armor set, whatever. And, we're obviously going to have armor and gear drop in Runeterra. And this guy during the Sun Disc raid freaking ninja loots the shield and leaves the guild on a single server. Like how it is in Classic, everyone's going to know about it. People are going to talk. All the way from Demacia, Noxus, Ionia, whatever. The whole server, the whole world is going to communicate about it and say that this guy ninja looted. And so you're damaging your reputation, and that kind of incentivizes players to behave well, because now your name has meaning. That's part of the reason why online is so hard. Like on Reddit, that's why 90% of people on Reddit are freaking rude, is because they're hiding behind a name. Even me, I'm hiding behind the name Endgrove, right? But at the same time, I have like a website tied to me. I have a YouTube channel tied to me. So there's a little bit more tied to my name compared to someone who's like literally just the username, and they can change it at any time. In World of Warcraft, the reason it mattered, and in any server, is because your player character, that name can't be changed. If you created your character and your name was Bigglesworth, well, your name is going to be Bigglesworth for as long as you're playing Classic WoW. And so your reputation matters. That's why online people are rude. It's because they can just change their name. It doesn't matter. And then there's a couple of different, so I saw this image online, and this is sourced from Reddit that I found while I was researching like people's sentiment. Megaserver was server doesn't matter except for RVR, and then locked traditional server system is Final Fantasy, so that would be like what I was talking about. Can pick any server at any time is RuneScape, which is like you log on. Toontown is like that too. I don't know if you guys ever played Toontown Rewritten. It's honestly a freaking great game. But you log on, you pick your server. There's Lord of the Rings Online, which is like traditional server system. That's the same, where it's like you have a single server, like Classic WoW. World of Warcraft, you have the Classic, which is a locked traditional server system. You do dungeons, raids, PvP with players from other servers. That's like retail. So you're on a traditional server, but then you start sharding in and communicating. So that's not 100% accurate right here. What this guy put, this is someone else's image, but you got the gist. It kind of like, there's Classic WoW and there's Retail WoW where it starts blending together different servers. EVE Online has a mega server. We're going to talk about that, one giant server. The Elder Scrolls Online also has a mega server, a giant server, but it has dynamic shards and layers. So shards are like different mini servers that they split to, and I have a good image for it. And there's layers, which is like the same server but different layers of it. And the new world is a lot traditional server system. So Riot Games, with its immense resource and global infrastructure from a decade of managing League of Legends, is uniquely positioned to solve the Megaserver paradox. This analysis explores the technical challenges, the social consequences of different server models, and the potential path Riot could take to build a world that is not only massive and stable, but feels like a living community, a world that truly remembers its players. And what do I mean by Megaserver paradox? I mean that if you have a Megaserver, let's say everyone in America is all on one server, and everyone in the EU is all on one server. Well, now the problem is that, let's say everyone in America gathers in Shurima, or let's say, let's not keep using the sun disk. Everyone in America gathers in Bilgewater Bay on Butcher's Bridge. Well, that's going to be pretty server intensive. It's probably going to cause the server to lag and possibly crash because every single player is concentrated in a single location. And that means that, what I mean by that is like, why it causes so many problems is because every single player is now compounding data by interacting with other players. So let's say that someone like throws a dance bomb that makes everyone dance or something like that. Well, now that data from that dance bomb needs to interact, instead of like with one player or two player out in freaking Kumongu, it's going to interact with freaking hundreds of players all at once because he threw it and it has like an area of effect. Well, that's why all the data keeps getting larger and larger and larger when you get so many players all in one space, because every ability, every action that someone does, and everyone has to be updated. So this person just steps to the left. Well, now hundreds of people need to be updated that this person just stepped to the left. The ghost in the machine, modern MMO worlds. At the heart of every MMO lies a daunting mathematical reality. The number of updates a server must process scales quadratically with the player count in an area. Doubling the player doesn't double the load, it explodes it, creating two game-breaking problems: server overload and content starvation. So you have all these people, look at their small group, they're all happy. But when too many players gather, the server lags or crashes. When resources are finite, too many players mean quest mobs are instantly killed and nodes are always depleted. To combat this, developers have built this sophisticated toolkit. So you can see this is like South Shore versus Terran Mill in World of Warcraft, and this many players, you can see like that guy just snapped back. There's a couple, look at that guy. Look at this guy's bouncing around. It causes players to lag, especially now with them all using abilities and calculating the damage on all those guys. Yeah, it's going to be a problem. The developer's toolkit. So one tool that they use to combat this is sharding. And I hate the word. I think it sounds like sharding, when you fart and there's a little bit of extra cushion that comes out. And that's how I feel about it. I feel like it's like sharding all over my game. So what sharding does is it creates multiple identical copies or shards of a zone and automatically distributing players among them to keep populations manageable. Modern cloud infrastructure allows these shards to be created and destroyed on demand. So all these players are all in one area, while a shard would basically create a separate server in a sense, and then port half these players over to there to maintain, balance and integrity. You can't do a South Shore versus Terran Mill on retail WoW. It's not even possible, because grouping this many players together in one area would like cause you to shard over to another server. That's how it works. The South Shore, and they created like a battleground of it because people wanted to do it. There's also layering, which is a temporary realm ride form of sharding. So think about it, you're on the same server in layering, but the thing is that you're not on a different server. You're still on the same server, it's just a different layer of it. And this is used for World of Warcraft at launch of Classic to handle the massive day one influx, because they're not going to shard people over to a different server. They're going to layer on the same server. Layers are gradually collapsed into a single world as the population stabilizes. So you can see this in Classic WoW, and this was probably even with the layering. So yeah, there's probably, you got to kill a wolf at the start in Classic World of Warcraft. That was probably really difficult at the launch. This is the difference. So you have sharding. You can see Billy over here on Realm 2, and there's Johnny and Karen over on Realm 1. Well, Johnny and Karen, maybe there's like a bunch of people over here in Realm 1. You can see how massive the server is compared to Realm 2. Well, Johnny and Karen got sharded over to Billy's Realm 2 server, and now they're on their own shard. Then there's layering, which is you take the same server and you just layer it. You just cut it into pieces, and then after 3 to 12 weeks, it becomes one server again. So they don't have it doesn't stay separate. That's why they did that for Classic WoW. There's also cross-realm zones, which is the opposite of sharding. Cross-realm zones merges players from multiple low population servers into a single shared instance of a zone to make the world feel alive. This is basically like if your server is dead, they want you to feel like you're in another server, that your server is not dead. You join a low population server, they'll do cross-realm zones. So you're out in Mulgore, which is like no one's there, some random place. Let's say you're out in, your server is completely empty, and you're out in, Vikaru, you're going to trade, or better yet, like that place you're probably not trading there. Tereshni. You're going to Tereshni to trade, but your server is completely dead. Well, when you get to Tereshni, it'll, do some cross-realm zones, and you'll be able to see other players. There's also phasing, which is horrible. It's a narrative tool that alters the world for an individual player based on their quest progression. Players in different phases, even in the same spot, are invisible to each other. Now, the problem with phasing is that you get stuff like this. Look at this guy phasing in and out, like half his characters are phasing. Watch, he'll pop back. There he is. Comes in, does some abilities, and crosses over to another phase. And I've seen this happen, like, let's say you're questing and the story world changes. The story advances to the point the world changes, which is pretty cool that you can like see the world change and adapt as you play. But I do see people like they'll accept a quest or turn down a quest, and then they'll just kind of fade away and disappear. The widespread adoption of these technologies is driven by economics. Elastic cloud computing like AWS is far more cost-effective than maintaining physical servers that must be over-provisioned for peak loads. This shift from a visible infrastructure, so choosing a server, to an indivisible one, automated sharding, prioritizes a frictionless just play experience. The unintended consequence is that by removing the choice of a home, the concept of the home itself erodes. The seamless experience becomes a placeless one. And so even though there's a bunch of people, it still feels empty because those people aren't real at this point. Like they might as well be NPCs. They're bouncing between shards, bouncing between worlds, bouncing between freaking zones, right? Cross-realm zones. It becomes like, yeah, sure, your world feels full, but it might as well be this. Hey, what up, Toucher? So comparison of MMO server architecture. These are like all of them listed. There's a classic isolated one that's like vanilla, WoW, EverQuest, Final Fantasy. Its stability with hardware limits and persistent world state, but its strong self-contained server identity and reputation systems. This is what needs to be maintained, in my opinion. That's what you need to keep and somehow expand out into something like a mega server. Like the community bonds, the player reputation matters, unique server culture. People were proud of their server. People would always say, oh, my server has the best PvP guild in America, Stuff like that. Or when you're watching like a PvP event, imagine you're watching like a League of Legends event, but that group, they play on your server, It's not just like a random team. Your League of Legends server, which is the server that you compete with, the server that whenever you queue into a League of Legends game, you're only playing with people, let's say even simplify it even further. Let's say League of Legends only lets you queue with people from Michigan or from your state. And League of Legends, that team that plays for you, plays on your whatever, they're like #1 ranked in League of Legends for PvP, they're from your state. It matters more. It means more to you because now you're like, oh, it's Michigan. That's why freaking sports teams do so well. It's because it's like groups everyone together as your state, compared to like when you're just a fan of a random team that has nothing to do with you. It creates a connection between you and that team. There's a psychology to it too, where it's like, when they win, you say we won. When they lose, you say they lost. It's because you want to feel like you're a part, and you definitely feel more you're a part of it when you're a part of that, more of a community bond. Then there's sharding and layering, which is managing high player density, cost efficient to be elastic scaling, and we talked about that, how it fragments player groups within the same server. And it's smooth launch. It handles crowds, but it prevents content starvation, but player resources disappearing, social disconnect, and feels artificial. Like sharding, these might as well be NPCs when people get sharded or layered between you. Then there's the mega server, which eliminates a lot of the problems. The problem is that it's easy to group with friends. This is incorrect. I had to fix that. The problem is that it's very resource intensive. Then there's the single shard, single percent unified server for all players. Extreme technical difficulty requires specific game design. That's like EVE Online. Which is, EVE Online does a mega server, so that's what happened. These are supposed to be one. The cost of convenience, eroding community. The most jarring impact of dynamic sharding. Yo, I saw your videos posted on Reddit, found a lot of negativity, to be honest. Yeah, we were talking about that. I never usually comment on Reddit, but I had stern word. Hopefully people can be nicer in this community. It's all right. I've been doing this for, 3 years now. So like I was saying, like we're talking about MMOs and how player identity matters and what ways Riot can manage, like create the servers and the Megaserver paradox, and talking about reputation. And I was talking about how like my reputation matters a little bit more, right? Because I'm tied to a YouTube channel, I'm tied to a website, compared to someone on Reddit who's just tied to a handle that can be changed tomorrow. And so that's a great example of sharding, or layering, or cross-realm hopping, whatever, because your reputation doesn't matter. In an MMO, reputation has to matter because it's kind of like a police force for yourself, for the community. You're more conscious of your name when it has value. That's why people police themselves better in person compared to Reddit. Because Reddit or Twitter or whatever, like a person will have 0 followers, their account doesn't matter to them. They'll just do whatever they want, say whatever they want, and not be concerned with the consequences. In MMO, your name should matter, unlike Reddit, where your name, for most people, doesn't. The cost of consequences, eroding a community. The most jarring impact of dynamic sharding is the invisible instability. The most jarring impact of dynamic sharding is the visible instability it introduces. Players report rare monsters vanishing mid-fight, friends become invisible to each other in the same spot, and resource nodes disappearing upon approach. These aren't bugs, these are systems working as intended, making the world feel fragile and fake. I cannot count the amount of times that I would literally walk. I could see like a mine node. I would walk to it and it would disappear. I'd walk back a little bit and then it would reappear. And that's because there's probably a bunch of people mining that node, and so when I'd get close to it, it would literally shard me over to a different layer or something like that. Or the amount of times I'd see someone disappear, or the amount of times someone's like, "Where are you?" "Oh, I'm by the mailbox in front of the auction house." And I'd have to literally invite them to a group because I wouldn't be able to see them. And we were on the same server. People will be less likely to do things bad if they can be held accountable. Yeah. How does this work in WoW? By the way, never played it before. So WoW has a couple options. Classic WoW is a single server. So your server is your server and you'll never leave it. Even if your server is completely empty, you're isolated and there's no sharding or layering or anything like that. Compared to World of Warcraft retail, which is like, you can do dungeons, raids, PvP with players from other servers. Even in your main like hub city, you'll likely see people from your other servers. But basically it makes the world feel full. And the problem with classic WoW is that, when you get a bunch of people grouped together, it becomes like this where everyone's lagging because of the amount of interactions that are happening in a single second. But the problem with the retail WoW is that you can't have events like this, because this would automatically layer and shard people like crazy to make the server run more smoothly, because you can't have this many people interacting at once. So this isn't even possible in retail WoW. So there's trade-offs. From neighbors to NPCs. In a world populated by a revolving door of anonymous players, there are no social consequences for one's actions. Reputation becomes meaningless. Fellow adventurers cease to be potential allies or rivals and are devalued into temporary advanced NPCs, tools to be used and discarded. This fosters an environment that is not just antisocial, but can be actively toxic, as the system removes the natural incentives for cooperation that arise from repeated interaction. So you can see everyone crying around this guy in this image. Well, I mean, if this wasn't like, if this is clearly classic WoW, so this is an isolated server, this guy just died in Ironforge, it has value. Like this, they might know this player, they recognize his name, and something just killed him in Ironforge. Well, you know what? If this guy died in Ironforge, they're probably gonna run and tell everyone at the front of Ironforge that someone just got killed. There's maybe a horde in the area. There's a horde rogue running around Ironforge, and everyone's probably gonna run around, do some like area of effect abilities to try to find him. In retail WoW, if this guy's dead on the floor, everyone's just gonna walk past him. One, because that rogue might not even be here, it might be on a different layer. And two, you could go up and tell these people, and they're all from different servers, and they're gonna layer into different layers the second they get over into this room. or shard over to different, and especially if they all start using abilities, it's going to shard them over for sure. It's like, this person doesn't matter anymore. And that, by the way, that's the first time they've ever seen this guy. He doesn't have a name to him. He's just anonymous person 123. Might as well be an NPC. This technology also creates a social uncanny valley. The world appears bustling, but the player's subconscious knows something is wrong. The other avatars look like players but behave like ghosts, appearing and disappearing without reason, unable to be traded with. This was recently updated by World of Warcraft, so you can trade with anyone on any server now. And that's because it was such a freaking problem. Like, I would literally be going into a dungeon with a group, and I try to trade them because I was like an alchemist, so I would make potions or whatever. And some of these potions would have effects that would help you when you go into the dungeon from the start. And so I'd be trying to trade these people the literal potion, and I couldn't because they were on a different server. And yet we were playing together for like an hour. And so it becomes like, okay, well, people don't really matter. It's a solo game, and you rarely communicate. This dissonance creates a deeply unsettling feeling of artificiality. And so this is really what it feels like. This person standing in the middle forest by himself, and he's just queuing for dungeons, looking for group. Legends of the Realm, Vanilla WoW's server identity. So to understand what's been lost, we must look to the golden age of the isolated server, exemplified by the original 2004 release of World of Warcraft. Each server has a self-contained digital world, a virtual city-state, and choosing a server was choosing citizenship. This enforced and the citizenship can be revoked. That's the thing. That's how it should be. You know, your reputation matters. That's how it should be. This enforced isolation was the critical ingredient for a genuine community. In this closed ecosystem, a player's reputation was their most valuable currency. A ninja looter would be blacklisted server-side, while a skilled crafter or reliable tank could become famous. Your name meant something because your actions had lasting consequences. You can see these people all know each other. They're all grouped together. And even like these Horde and Alliance players are aware of each other, despite them being on separate factions. Over time, each server developed a unique culture. Sargeras was known for hyper-competitive PvP. Moonguard became a haven for role players, unless you go to, what's it called? There's an inn on Moonguard. I'm not even going to say it. The inn that must not be named. It's also known for that. This server identity was a source of pride and a powerful retention tool. The key was not the number of players, but the persistence of that population. Modern sharding by design creates 100% population churn, guaranteeing an anonymity and preventing these cultures from ever taking root. You can see, like, you know, everyone's, this is just like a PvP in classic WoW, and these people that are playing in this battleground are actually, you know, they'll see each other out in the world again. The Megaserver paradox. In response to issues like dead servers and fractured friend groups, many MMOs adopted a Megaserver architecture. And then I'll go into that theory. LOL has an honor system, and certain functions within the game are blocked/unblocked based on your track record. I am hopeful they will do something similar in MMO. Yeah, definitely an honor system would be good too. Yeah, I think an honor system should be in play in addition to something like this. So in theory, on the Megaserver paradox, its ultimate solution: no server selection. You can always play with friends, and the world is always populated. The reality, however, is that a Megaserver is just a sophisticated load balancing system that still relies heavily on the same sharding technology. It's often just a buzzword for automated channels. So when I really looked into Megaserver is just one big server for everyone, but it uses a lot of sharding and layering because to combat, you know, the groups and a bunch of, like, this would on a Megaserver, you wouldn't want this. People would get sharded and layered, layered, not really sharded. A lot of layering in Megaservers. But we can look at two that did it: Guild Wars 2 and Elder Scrolls Online. Guild Wars 2 pioneered this tech, ensuring every zone feels active. However, by mixing players from an entire region into efficiently dissolving the unique server communities from the game's early years. The Elder Scrolls Online faces similar challenges, with players noting that community can only exist within formal guild structures. The European Megaserver also highlights the problem of language barriers, when players often find themselves unable to communicate with others on their shard. So, like, you know, a Megaserver for EU, a Megaserver for America, everyone speaks English. A Megaserver for EU, well, now people are speaking French, Spanish, freaking Italian. It's like, okay, how many people are you going to group? Are you going to have a different Megaserver for each country, or you're gonna limit the language? I don't know. It's tough. A single sharded exception is EVE Online. The only MMO to achieve a true single server experience is EVE Online. This is possible because the vast emptiness of space is a natural load balancer. In rare cases of massive fleet battles, CCP games uses time dilation, this wouldn't work anyways, but they slow down the simulation in that star system to as little as 10% speed. This gives the server time to process everything, a solution untenable for a fast-paced fantasy MMO where thousands might gather in one city. Like, you can't slow these interactions down by 10% in an MMO like World of Warcraft or how, Runeterra is going to be. But you can do that with EVE Online. So something like this, you can tell it's slowed down. And that's because there's just so much going on, which is fine for a game like this, but wouldn't work for us. Ultimately, the Megaserver solves a logistical problem but fails the social one. It provides a crowd, but it cannot create a community. The Runeterra conundrum. Riot's decision on server architecture will be a brand-defining statement. Public comments from developers show a keen awareness of this challenge. Former executive producer Greg Street once highlighted the team's group-centered design philosophy. So this was a thought that they were aware of from the very beginning, back when Greg Street, Ghostcrawler, was on the team. This will be vague, but our philosophy is that if you want to play a single-player game, there are great ones out there. Horizon, GOW, Persona. Shout out to Pathfinder WOTR. If you want to play a game with a community, with friends, then play our MMO. I thought that was a really big statement. More recently, developers acknowledged the difficult trade-off, stating the most important goal is to capture the essence of a community and make player interaction matter. I'm from the EU, and this is kind of a non-issue, to be honest. There's very few countries in the EU that refuse to speak English in online games. I also don't want a server for every country. That would be horrible. Yeah, because you wouldn't have enough players anyways. But that makes sense. So EU, that's good to hear. I've never played on an EU server, so I just assumed that you guys all speak different languages. How do you have like a server where everyone's all on one for EU? But if everyone speaks English, then that works. So you have like one Megaserver for EU, one Megaserver for US.
The things that I think Mark nailed it early on when we were talking about trade-offs is like, ultimately you can build games in different approaches, but they have really different trade-offs about that sense of identity and the sense of community that gets created. But then when you start to commoditize human interactions and like you're the same as any other bot that's walking by me, then you lose a lot of that. Megaserver also has some risk-on approaches. We actually have an engineer that worked on Guild Wars 2 and designed a lot of the Megaserver work. It has some of the flaws and risks in that space. And the one thing that we definitely don't want to do is try and solve these solutions for absolutely everybody. We do want to have opinionated takes that have some trade-offs, but a lot of that essence of community and people feeling important and actually having these interactions matter with other people, those are values that we're excited to chase.
Yeah. So he's got the right mindset in mind, right? When it comes to what's needed on an MMO and what they're looking at, they understand that there's culture, there's community, there's like your value matters, right? Like your name matters. So he mentioned the things that I was talking about that are very important. He talked about Guild Wars 2, the Megaserver. So that was really good to hear too. That was one of the most, when I heard that and then when I first listened to the video, I was like, okay, good. I'm worried about visual bloat / clarity. If there's a Megaserver and everyone uses abilities at the same time, yeah, that's something that I'm about to talk about too. So Riot is a novice in online infrastructure. The company operates Riot Direct, a private global network, and has extensive experience with scalable microservice architectures. However, the dream of a single non-sharded world fantasy MMO remains technology infeasible for now. The case of Amazon's New World, which still relied on isolated servers with a 2,500 player cap despite being hosted by AWS, is a powerful cautionary tale. The solution is a potential hybrid solution. Given these constraints, Riot is likely exploring hybrid models. The two-tiered model, offering both modern sharded mega servers and a limited number of community servers that uses the classic isolated model. This caters to both crowds but risks splitting the player base. So you could choose, you want to be on a mega server, you want to be on a community. Strategic, or do you want to be a mega server, do you want to be on like one that has better server integrity and you won't lag. Strategic and temporary sharding, using sharding as a surgical tool only when necessary, like for new expansion launches or massive world events, while keeping social hubs and older zones persistent and non-sharded. This is like one that I think is great, but this is the best one that I came up with. The socially aware shard. The most promising path involves leveraging Riot's greatest asset, the pre-existing social graph of its massive player base. A socially aware algorithm could prioritize placing players in shards with their guildmates, friends lists, recent group members, and even friends from League of Legends or Valorant. This could transform sharding from a community breaking technology into a community reinforcing one. So what I'm saying here is that I like the combination of these two. So sharding only happens at specific events. So the game's launching, the starting zone, yeah, you'd want some sharding on there because otherwise everyone's gonna log on and just lag out. And that's not a good player experience. Or, the raids opening up or something like that. And it's only allowed in those specific instances at those specific moments. So that way you can still have engagements like South Shore versus Terran Mill, which I agree are a mess when it comes to like abilities. Like it's harder to tell what's going on for sure when a bunch of people are doing a bunch of abilities all at once. At the same time, it's clearly appealing to a large player base because look at these people. They look like they're having a great time. And you can do everything you can to like make it visually clear when someone uses an ability, but when you have hundreds of people all using ability, it's going to be hard to tell, who's doing what for sure. But yeah, I think it should only be in isolated events, and it should be a socially aware shard. So it shouldn't be just sharding people haphazardly. The world that remembers. The evolution of MMO servers reveals a core dilemma. Classic servers forged powerful communities, but had crippling logistics, while modern solutions fix the logistics but stripped away the persistence and accountability that form a virtual world soul. The choice Riot faces is not just technical, it's a statement of values. Will Runeterra be a technological, impressive, but socially sterile theme park where actions leave no trace? Or will it be a true digital society with the memory, where players build reputations, forge communities, and feel that their presence truly matters? The true challenge for Riot is to imbue their world with a soul. The server architecture they choose will be the code that determines whether their world can remember.